The year is 2010. Dota 2 was announced almost a year previously in 2009, however, Dota 1 was still the king in most regions of the world. This was hardly more evident than in China, where the best teams in the world trained and competed. In this region of juggernauts, one team stood out from the rest. The 2010 version of EHOME is considered by many to be the greatest Dota team of all time. After claiming championship after championship in China, EHOME flew to ESWC in Paris, where they showed that they were indeed the team to beat on the international stage when they swept through the tournament in style. With all eyes on them, they were the heavy favorites heading into what was the biggest international Dota tournament to date. All was not lost in the West, however, as a team of Ukrainians and Russians managed to propel themselves ahead of the other European elite teams. DTS, after securing second place in ESWC and claiming first in the online MYM Pride League, were invited to WDC with hopes of an entire hemisphere on their back. DTS had shown themselves capable of beating Asian teams online, but most believed that when it came to LAN tournaments, the Chinese were simply too strong to be defeated. In a twist unpredicted by many, IceFrog released 2 balance patches for Dota after ESWC ended, which introduced several game-changing mechanics such as the reliable gold feature and the addition of arcane boots, which proved to be a game-changing item. And indeed, the most recent version, 6.69, was introduced into competitive Dota with only around 1 month to go before this massive event. In another shocking occurrence, EHOME and DTS found themselves in the same group, where the top 2 would move on to the bracket, and the rest would go home. Still, most were confident in EHOME's success as the match drew closer and closer, and the hype for the tournament was reaching unrivaled heights. As the game got underway, many were curious to see how both captains would approach the new Captain's Mode system, which had recently been changed in 6.68, which of course was after ESWC. And many were curious to see if the captains could respond to the changes in game mechanics, as well as the balance changes to many heroes introduced in both 6.68 as well as 6.69. With their first 3 bans, DTS decided to ban out Visage, the king of the tri-lanes, and one of the Chinese favorite heroes, Broodmother, who was perhaps the most annoying split pusher in the game at the moment, and Pugna, who was a very strong pusher and of course did a number on spellcasting based supports. In response, EHOME decided to ban out Doombringer, one of the strongest mids in the pools, due to his ability to shut down individual heroes in teamfights and his ability to flash farm. Beastmaster, one of the strongest map controllers in the game, and Chen, who was the European go-to hero due to his strong pushing potential. With their first pick, DTS opened up with Vengeful Spirit, who was a very standard support, and EHOME decided to respond with Windrunner as well as Shadow Fiend. Windrunner, of course, being the most versatile hero in the game, and Shadow Fiend due to his strong mid lane presence and his ability to deal out immense amounts of damage in the mid to late stages of the game. As a response, DTS decided to be unpredictable and decided to snatch up Dazzle, as well as Enchantress. Dazzle was a hero who was not receiving too much attention at the time, but of course was known for his ability to heal as well as his prowess to push, and Enchantress was beginning to get some eyes, having been changed in 6.69, getting herself an Aghanim Scepter upgrade which increased the attack range of her attack, as well as her impetus strikes. Meanwhile, EHOME decided to respond with Earthshaker, again another very standard support, and so far the Chinese were playing as predictable as possible. With their second bans, DTS decided to ban out Kunkka as well as Enigma due to their abilities to stop pushes as well as to control teamfights, and EHOME decided to ban out Necrolite as well as Bayharder due to their strong teamfight presence, and of course Necrolite's ability to heal in conjunction with Dazzle was feared by the Chinese as they were expecting a heal strategy perhaps. DTS decided to play some of the cards on their table as they decided to snatch up the Pandaren Brewmaster, whose only change was that in his ultimate form, even at level 1, the Boulder Toss ability of his Earth Spirit could be cast twice because his cooldown was decreased from 10 to 7. EHOME, not threatened by this choice, decided to pick up Crystal Main, again, a very standard support who is very powerful in tri-lane versus tri-lane situations. And with their last choice, DTS decided to play their most dangerous card, as they decided to pick up the Lone Druid, having been buffed to a very tremendous extent in 6.69, which allowed his Spirit Bear to actually hit people while they were moving, as well as increasing his movement speed and increasing the attack point of the Spirit Bear. EHOME, perhaps not knowing what to do about this choice, decided to snatch up Razor, a very dominant trial vs. trial carry, and whose only changes in 6.69 were small buffs to his Static Link, as well as a small cooldown buff to Plasma Field. Regardless, very few people knew what to expect, as DTS picked up a lineup that was never seen in a competitive environment to date, and EHOME decided to go with a very standard approach. For DTS, the captain, Artstyle, decided to take control of Enchantress, who later became his signature hero. Dread took control of the Pandaren Brewmaster, Dendy played the mid-solo Dazzle, Light of Heaven decided to take control of the Lone Druid, and Vengeful Spirit was handled by NS. Meanwhile, for the Chinese, the captain 820 decided to play the Crystal Maiden. King J was given the reins to Razor. 357 was granted control of the Earthshaker. Burning was given Shadow Fiend. And last but not least, EHOME X took control of the Windrunner. Immediately from the start, it seemed that DTS had no intentions of allowing EHOME to get into their comfort zone, as they decided to do something pretty unconventional at the time, as they offensively jungled their Enchantress, and with scarcely a minute and a half going through the game, DTS managed to secure themselves a first blood, and used that momentum to help push down the first tier 1 tower. In this era of Dota, pushing down a tower before the 2-minute mark was almost unheard of, and at this point, both teams knew that DTS had come out, and they had come out strong. EHOME decided to respond by looking to apply as much pressure as possible to the other sides of the map, as they tried to gank Light of Heaven in the lane and also applied pressure on the middle lane to Dendy. However, unfortunately for the Chinese, both the gank attempts were unsuccessful, and after about 3 minutes, even though EHOME were able to climb out to a slight advantage in the CS chart, it seemed clear that DTS was still in the advantage. This is hardly more clear than at 4 minutes into the game, DTS were able to secure their second tower, and using this momentum, they decided to go for an extremely aggressive play, diving past the tier 1 in the middle lane, and almost reaching the tier 2 in the middle lane, as they managed to secure themselves 2 very important kills, one on Burning, who had previously not been challenged too much by Dendy in the middle lane. At 6 minutes and 30 seconds, EHOME were finally able to counter with their first successful kill, as they managed to set up a beautiful engagement in the middle lane up against Vengeful Spirit. However, at this exact moment, Dendy was exacting revenge on the top lane, carefully shutting down EHOME X and making sure that X had very little impact at the early stage of the game. With the help of Artstyle, and of course one of Dendy's many haste turns during that game, Dendy was able to help secure that kill. However, EHOME was not yet done, as they managed to maneuver themselves into position to finally secure themselves their first kill on Light of Heaven on the bottom lane, who at that point was having a miserable time. Despite Light of Heaven's struggles, Dendy, with another haster in his back pocket, was able to secure yet another tower, and with that tower being secured, they were able to successfully engage upon Burning. Unfortunately for EHOME 820, he was just caught out at the wrong place at the wrong time, and Dendy was able to secure himself a double kill. At 9 minutes into the game, Dread finally made his presence shown on the map, as he utilized his ultimate for the first time during the game and picked up another kill on Burning, and scarcely 30 seconds later, Earthshaker was engaged upon on the middle tier 2 tower, as he was brought down yet again. However, EHOME was able to respond in kind by once again killing off Light of Heaven on the bottom lane, and with this death, EHOME was finally able to bring down their first tier 1 tower with 10 minutes and 20 seconds on the clock. Keep in mind that this was EHOME's first tower of the game, while DTS had already managed to claim 3 towers, so despite EHOME having a slight farm advantage, DTS was clearly ahead in terms of the economy game. This was hardly more evident than in the engagement on the bottom lane, as EHOME looked to retreat after applying a slight amount of pressure towards the tier 2 tower on the bottom lane. Due to Artstyle's incredible endurance on Enchantress and a nicely timed Shallow Grave on Dendy, DTS were able to slowly whittle away EHOME, as DTS themselves managed to escape with 0 casualties. Although it looked very grim for EHOME only managed to escape with 1 casualty. With some clever juking, 357 was able to escape in the trees and teleport away to safety. While this was going on, Burning looked to apply as much pressure as possible towards the middle lane, but with a very fast blink dagger, Dread managed to use his Pandaren Brewmaster spirits to get a perfect chain stun on the retreating Shadow Fiend and managed to secure a kill. With 14 minutes in the game, EHOME, after applying a slight amount of pressure on the top tier 1 tower, looked to retreat as Crystal Main was able to escape to safety. However, with the incredible chasing power of DTS and the blink dagger up on the Brewmaster, DTS were able to slowly but surely catch up towards the retreating Chinese players, and they managed to successfully bring down the Earthshaker and turn their attentions onto Windrunner. Meanwhile, Crystal Main looked to help out her allies despite teleporting herself away to safety. However, Dendy finally arrived to the party and he managed to get himself a mega kill, and with another poison touch was able to secure himself an unstoppable streak with only 14 minutes passed on the clock. Again, while this was all going on, Burning was doing as Burning so often does, as he looked to apply as much pressure towards the middle lane, and this was the hallmark of Chinese Dota. Whenever something on the map was happening, they always looked to get trades, as they managed to bring down 2 towers in quick succession. With 17 minutes on the clock, DTS were finally able to group up, as they deemed themselves ready to push down EHOME's base, as they managed to clean up 2 towers in very quick succession on the bottom lane. And so it came to pass at 17 minutes and 30 seconds, EHOME had no outer towers left on the map. Despite this incredible predicament, EHOME responded by killing off the top tower and also cleaning up the tier 2 in the middle lane, as DTS only remained with 1 tower. And as the base fight began to break out, it was clear that DTS was just in a bit over their heads, as they managed to successfully initiate onto Crystal Main. However, Crystal Main was clearly not the most important thing, and 357 was able to get himself into a beautiful position and dropped an incredible Echo Slam. Despite the fight shaping out quite well for DTS at the beginning, after the Brewmaster ultimate wore off, and after Burning was able to get himself off into a great position with his haste ring, EHOME slowly but surely started to clean up the kills, as King J and Burning managed to clean up the retreating DTS roster, and when everything was said and done, the result of DTS's first base break was a complete and utter team wipe. Perhaps recognizing on this failure, DTS managed to go for Roshan and managed to claim it in a matter of seconds, as with their immense damage output, were finally able to pick up an Aegis on Enchantress. And at 22 minutes in the game, DTS with an Aghanim Scepter on art style were once again trying to push the base as they slowly but surely went to work on the tower. Once again, Dread initiated, but this time the Echo Slam by 357 was not in a great position, as with the 4-staff initiation he wasn't able to do as much as he previously hoped, and art style started to go to work, as he managed to pick up a multitude of kills. King J tried to do whatever he could to slow down the assault, as he managed to get himself a nice round of static link, but Artstyle was the only casualty, as he lost his Aegis in exchange for a triple kill, and EHOME were forced to spend multiple buybacks as a response. When everything was said and done, DTS managed to escape with 0 casualties, and with an Aghanim Scepter now up on Dendy's Dazzle, DTS were able to once again try to go for the base, as with the incredible minus armor being provided by Weave, they managed to just bulldoze their way down towards the middle barracks and initiated on the Earthshaker, who was giving them fits in previous team fights. Burning tried to do whatever he could, but when everything was said and done, DTS were finally able to claim the first barracks of the game on the middle lane, and with their incredible durability, they managed to get themselves back up to full HP, and it was clear that they were not willing to settle for just one lane of barracks, as they immediately turned their attentions towards the bottom lane. And after a couple of seconds, the tier 3 tower finally collapsed on the bottom lane, and the melee barracks was soon left to fall as well, as King J finally respawned, but it was just simply too late, and DTS were able to claim almost 2 sets of barracks without losing any heroes. At 32 minutes in the game, DTS once again looked to secure themselves another Roshan, and they managed to do so despite being contested by EHOME. But with Dread's fantastic initiation, they were able to disrupt EHOME's counter initiation and managed to get themselves off to a strong start in the early stages of the team fight. Despite EHOME managing to survive for quite a long time, eventually they were just out-itemed and out-tanked, as they slowly but surely fell one by one to the more durable forces of the Ukrainian squad. DTS managed to get themselves the final tier 3 on the top lane. However, in this engagement, Artstyle had most of his damage drained by Static Link, and despite the forces of Shallowgrave, decided to sacrifice himself for his team. He respawned with the Aegis, and DTS, with a little bit of an overextension, managed to dive towards the tier 4, but EHOME were holding strong, and this seemed to be the last gasp of hope for the Chinese, as even though Burning died, EHOME were looking to secure themselves at least a successful defense from Mega Creeps, as they only lost one barracks on the top lane. As EHOME managed to take down 3 heroes on the side of DTS, Light of Heaven was able to escape, and at 37 minutes in the game, the last gasp of the Chinese finally came in, as Light of Heaven, with his incredible tanky nature and with a little bit of help from the Root Lords, managed to get himself a nice entangle off onto King J, and Artstyle was able to successfully kite King J towards his death. Meanwhile, Earthshaker was forced to drop his last Echo Slam, but it hardly had any effect, as the Brewmaster Spirits as well as the incredibly tanky Lone Druid were able to soak up the majority of the damage. And with one last usage of the Rabid, Light of Heaven decided to turn his attentions onto the last remaining barracks on the side of EHOME, as EHOME found themselves in a precarious position, as they finally just simply ran out of gas despite fighting their hearts out. King J and Burning tried to do whatever they could as they bought back, but despite their best efforts, DTS simply just had too much firepower. And at 38 minutes in the game, perhaps the greatest team in Chinese history finally fell to the forces of the Ukrainians and the Russians. When everything was said and done, DTS managed to move on in the group stages as EHOME was knocked down and knocked out of the tournament. DTS managed to bring down LGE.SGTY, another of the Chinese powerhouses, before finally falling to the superior forces of Nirvana China in the semifinals of the WDC 2010 edition. However, DTS showed themselves worthy of competing with the best in the world, as they managed to claim 3rd place and managed to bring down 2 of the top 3 Chinese powerhouses of that era. And this gave hope towards Western Dota scene that they too could perhaps compete in years to come. Thank you for watching. Big thanks goes to Diesmiling as well as WDC for all their help going into this project. If you like this video, if you want to see more videos similar to this one, please like and subscribe to my channel where you can get the latest updates on what I do. Also, in the comments below, please do leave suggestions on which game you want me to cover next. Keep in mind this can be from either Dota 1 or Dota 2, as great games know no limitation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.